start?
Okay, Team 4, you can start.
Good morning to everyone here today. Now I have a question for all of you. By a show of hands, how many of you can hear? Now imagine that overnight you lost your hearing. What would you do if you were deaf? How many of you would be able to be successful with your lives? Who would be there to support you along your journey? That was me. I was born hearing just like all of you. But when I was 10 years old, I was stricken with spinal meningitis, and overnight, I became deaf. My parents lovingly brought me to a hospital, and the doctor told them, "I'm sorry, I treat sick people, but I can't treat dying people. So take your son home. There's no hope." Fortunately, 4 days later, I sat up in bed, and I was alive, but I was deaf. My life was not over. My parents continued to believe in me. When my dad learned about an opportunity of a deaf school in my home country of Burundi, he showed me a letter, and he asked me, "Do you want to go to this school?" And when I said yes, he wasted no time in making preparations to get me there. My dad had to bicycle for 13 hours to get me to this school. Imagine, in Burundi, the scorching heat and mountainous terrain for 13 hours on a journey to start my education. When we got there, Dad wrote on a piece of paper and said, "You will start your education tomorrow, and I know you will be successful. And I will come back during Christmas break to pick you up." Those were the last words my father ever spoke to me. I never saw him again, because 1 month later, he was killed in the genocide in Burundi. But he started this path to my education, and I am here today because of him. I came from one of the poorest countries in the world to stand to one of the most prestigious colleges in the world in front of you today because of him. I'm the first deaf person here, but I will not be the last, and I'm asking for your help to make that happen. There are 72 million deaf people in the world, and only 80% of them are living in developing countries. 17% have access to education. That's 83% that do not, and that number is too high. Something must be done. And me and my team are making that happen. We are hoping to provide a summit this year entitled Ideal to help educate and advocate for these deaf youth, and we need your help. Now, how are we going to do that? We are planning to focus on East African communities: Burundi, Rwanda, Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya. We're starting with 50 deaf youth from these 5 countries that have already been recommended by their communities and national agencies for the deaf to us. We've already accepted applications for these youths. And we've already gotten information through a survey online why they want to attend this summit. We're teaching 3 important things. What I have learned in the world of education is the knowledge that I want to impart to these 50 deaf youth. We will train them on how to become leaders and mentors in their own home communities. We will identify what they need to be successful and block any barriers that are in their path. Now, these are the 4 things we're after. Education, because without education, you cannot have employment. Also, we need to develop leadership and mentor skills. And we want to teach them how to advocate for themselves, for their basic human rights as individuals that can help them to achieve education. We've picked 5 African countries because we want all these deaf to be united in the same mission. Now, when we asked deaf around the world why they wanted to attend this summit, these were some of their replies. Some said they wanted to make government change policies toward people with disabilities. Others said they wanted to ensure that skills acquired are passed on from one leader to another. They wanted to see how to overcome challenges and also had to advocate for themselves. and this will all be taught at the summit this year. Our social impact expectations are within the first year, we would be training these 50 youths from these 5 different countries. That's 10 youths from each country. After the summit, they will go back to their home countries and mentor other deaf. At the same time, our 1-week summit will discuss what are the most challenging obstacles deaf people have to face in this world, and how do you expect to overcome them. Within the second year, we will establish a resource center where all the information will be accessible online through a website. We will translate it into 5 African countries as well as sign language so that all this information is readily available. We want to see an increase in the statistics for deaf that are educated. We will teach them how to apply for scholarships, how to apply for universities, and we're hoping to have 50 youth in universities by the 3rd year. We're already ready to go. Our team is geared up. We've got the summit in place. Hotel, board, lodging has been accommodated. We have a curriculum in place as well, and we are ready to teach the deaf for the next generation. This project is on its way, and the IDEAL team has volunteered their time to be able to invest in the deaf for the future. Two hotels in Uganda have invested for us. We already have generous donors that are contributing toward this conference. And all we're asking of you is $15,000 so that we can establish an informational page so that deaf can be able to access this information via the internet. They can know the resources that are available to them so that they can become successful. Thank you so much for being a part of our team, IDEAL. Do you have any questions?
Are there other organizations
How many?
offering similar type programs, and how successful are they?
No, there's none that I am aware of. We have the World Federation of the Deaf, and that teaches them only about human rights. We also have the Nippon Foundation that provides 5-year scholarships to Gallaudet University in Rochester and also Institute for the Deaf in New York. But most of the real problem is that most of the youth in Africa don't have access to this information. The World Federation for the Deaf has a youth group as well, and we're working closely to partner with them as we establish this program.
How many members on his team, and are they all deaf?
Well, currently, my team is here with me. There are 3 deaf, and most of them are hearing students. In Uganda now, all of them are deaf, with 3 interpreters that have volunteered their time as well. And we have 3 hearing people on our board, as well as 2 deaf board members.
Once you raise the awareness of the youth at this conference, that they go back to their home countries in East Africa with few programs to support them or no programs, what will happen? Will they just become discouraged?
We did research on this, and the plan is to work closely with the established programs in their home countries. We're not interested in developing any new programs, but helping them to take advantage of the programs already in place. Each country has a national agency for the deaf, and we will establish a resource center in collaboration with these so that we can get more funding to set up a resource center that deaf can come together and find out about the services offered to them. We now have video relay where deaf can see deaf through a webcam and are able to communicate that way, and we will be able to have mentors to be able to help some to go to universities. Once those deaf go to universities, they would remain in contact with the other deaf in their country and provide experiences and knowledge that they've learned along the way.
You have one more question?
Most NGOs in Africa do not have any knowledge of deaf people, so we're seeking to raise awareness of the deaf culture in general.
My follow-up question is, what typically happens to deaf kids in Africa who don't have access to these kinds of programs? What kind of life could you imagine you would have had if you had not had the opportunity for education?
Wow, that's a deep question. Well, I grew up in Burundi, and all the people who have access to education, most of us became deaf later in life. So thankfully we're able to read and write, and I'm able to lip read as well. Now Burundi has no interpreter program, which means in high school I would not have access to education because there'd be no interpreter for me. I would just have to go to some kind of work training program, and you know, most women are pregnant at an early age. They feel like there's no hope for them. Some men are more determined and they feel that they can, you know, get a job in carpentry or something like that. But there's just really no aspiration for the deaf in Africa. And I want to let them know that because I'm here in America, there are opportunities for us here. And I want the hearing and the deaf to partner together to make this possible. So we can actually train interpreters in their home countries to get them the education they need before they apply for scholarships in universities. Did you have a question?
Yeah. So this is considered to be a U.S.-based program. Have you talked to people such as USAID and State Department to see if they're doing similar programs or if they can be of assistance to you?
Through the research I've done, I don't see any other programs like this one. They have similar programs that target deaf, but they don't they have similar programs, but I'm sorry, they do not target deaf individuals. And so we're trying to get this established and get this moving, and then hopefully reach out to them and let them be able to focus on the deaf audience, target them as individuals.
Thank you. That is time.